Welcome, everyone, to today's Scaling with People. I'm Guinevere Query, your host and founder of Guide to HR. Today, we're going to be talking about benefits and when is the right time to bring in benefits as a startup? And what does that look like? So today I have Jeremy Vesta with me. Jeremy, it's nice to have you on the call.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much, Guinevere.
So tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so we've got a startup business that's been around for about 10 years, and it's in the healthcare sphere. But it started very small. It was just the founding members. We had some other businesses going at the time, so we had some other resources. But we're starting to grow, and we're adding those people. But the nice thing about our group and our background is, we have experience running Fortune 500 type companies, all the way down to itty bitty companies. So there's a good amount of expertise within our organization that's helped. My personal background, graduated from Northwestern, econ degree, big data nerd, love stats, all that stuff, and kind of got into commodity trading and joined the family business, about 12 years ago. And this product was something that we had kind of developed as something that was a give back to our employees. Ended up saving us a bunch of money, but was a really positive thing. And so we started this business. Well, that started us down a 10-year journey that feels a lot longer than maybe it should have been, where we learned a lot of things. We learned what not to do, but we also learned some things of what to do. And some of these things are really challenging. Benefits being one of them, for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. Absolutely. So before we jump into the benefits part, as a founder yourself, tell me if you could go back to your
Yeah.
younger self, 10 years, even 7, 5 years earlier, and tell yourself, don't do this, do this, start this
Mhm.
earlier, think about it differently.
Yeah.
What's a lesson learned that if you could go back and tell yourself, you would?
I think it's never too early to start prospecting. I mean, I think when you're creating your IP and crystallizing your methods and things like that, there's the sense of, customers are going to be there because this is a great product and you're excited about your product
Yep.
and it's really great. But, that's the time to really start prospecting, and it'll A, push you to get ready a little bit faster. But B, it gives you that pipeline, and you can always say, no, this isn't a good fit for us right now. And that partner doesn't have to know that you're not even ready to really start yet. But building that pipeline of customers is a very, very important thing and a very important part of, making sure that that startup succeeds. Coming from a business that had some maybe too patient capital, we weren't under that kind of pressure. And I would encourage people to say, look, don't be afraid of the fact that you may not have as patient of capital and you've got to make it work, but get started prospecting, make those connections. The other thing I'd say is, you know, it's easy, especially when you've come from an industry, um, to think that most people would be a little naive. These people are our friends. I'm working with this broker, this connector, this person, this whatever. And I don't want to say I've become a little jaded, but I think it's important to maintain your skepticism all the way through, to be looking at the angles, not that they're not going to help you, but just understanding as a pure business transaction, they have their best interest at heart, just like
Mhm.
you have your best interest at heart. Keep that in the forefront of your mind. Go into it eyes wide open. It doesn't say anything good or bad about that connector, individual, or anything you're using. It's just something to be aware of, because at some point their best interest may not align with yours, and you want to be prepared for that. And that's the time when you need to exit or take a different method to that same customer or something like that. So I think that's very valuable too. Just be eyes wide open. Try to be, some things you're not going to know because you've never done this before. But the more you can be skeptical, I think the better.
Yeah, I think adding to that, learning from these prospect customers what their
Yes.
pain points are, because you might be thinking you're
Yeah.
solving it, but if you're having conversations with them, there might be something that, like, oh, I need to tweak that, then it would really solve it,
Right.
right? Or, oh, I thought I need to go down the left path, but I really need to go down the right path to
Yeah.
solve it. And so, don't get stuck in your own head thinking you have this spectacular
Yeah.
thing, because everyone's a little different, and learning what the problems are that you're trying to
Right.
solve from your customers will help your product be even better,
Well,
or
and
services, solutions.
specifically to our product, what was so interesting when you say that about really analyzing that is we had a product that saved us 25% net to our baseline, not net to trend, net to our baseline in
Wow.
4 years on our healthcare costs in a very, very large organization. So it was like, hey, who's not going to love this?
Right. Yeah.
Had we started prospecting earlier and had our eyes wide open, we would have known this is a really difficult product to describe because it's
Mm-hmm.
so broad based and it's a little bit difficult for people to believe it. And that's what shocked us. Was like, okay, all right, I get it. Nobody in this sphere has really ever generated, let's call it sizable results. It's usually fairly marginal.
Mm-hmm.
And having an understanding of that, we could have taken a different approach, fleshed things out in terms of describing what we do maybe a little bit better, and being a little bit more patient with that sales process. But again, had we had our eyes wide open and started a little bit earlier, I think we would have been better off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. That is
Yeah,
a great lesson learned for sure. Because I mean, I'm also a founder and I can find that, like, of course, who doesn't need or want my services, right? But then like
right.
having conversations with people, it's also not only understanding their pain point, but how to sell what
Yeah,
you do that will solve that pain point.
yeah,
Because you're in your
yeah.
mind, you're like, yeah, this will solve it. But like how you communicate that, how you
Mhm.
like transfer that information to your potential clients so they
Yep,
understand it and will be in buy-in. So all right, so let's jump into it. Benefits.
sure.
Startups, there's not a lot
Complicated.
of money. It's complicated. There's a lot going on. You may have 5 employees. Eventually, you have 20. Eventually, you get into the
Yep.
50 to 100 space. From your experience, when
Mhm.
would you recommend starting to think about benefits, and what do you start to think about?
I think it's really determined on the type of talent that you're looking for and the level of talent. If you're a really, let's call it, director and executive run business, and there's not a lot of need for extra resources. Maybe you have majority part-time type workers, things like that. It's probably not going to impact you a lot to not have benefits. And maybe you can offer a slight supplemental payment towards it or
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Just get creative because again, you can create whatever compensation package you want. It doesn't have to be like,
Exactly.
here's our benefit, here's our pay, right? The world is your oyster within, certain discrimination laws and things like that. But I would say once you're trying to attract a certain level of talent, and that may even be something as small as, look, during post-pandemic, accounts receivable people were like gone. They didn't
Yeah.
exist for a
Where
period
did
of
they
like
go?
6 months, right?
Right? Yeah.
My theory is they went back home to take care of their kids when they realized how expensive childcare was after that,
Yeah.
and so they kind of
Yeah.
left the workplace for a while. So,
Yeah.
but like during that phase, it was really necessary to be what you would call competitive from a recruiting perspective. And the fact of the matter is, if you don't have at least some semblance of a broad-based network and reasonable coverage, even if it's high deductible, for those individuals, even if it's fairly expensive, um, if you don't have that, that's going to be a big disadvantage to you hiring talent, and you're just not going to get those people. You'll find that you're getting later into the interviews, you're talking about that, you start describing the supplemental benefits package, and then people ghost you.
Yeah.
If, like I said, I told you before the podcast, fortunately, we had some unbelievable expertise because we had our former chief personnel officer invested in our company and providing all these services for free. So we had some really good guidance, right? We never really made too many missteps there, but you could easily see how important that was to people because they're taking a chance. And you might get lucky where, hey, their spouse has really good benefits, and so this isn't an issue. It's not like you can't recruit people, but you are going to be limited. So I think what you really have to assess is kind of that tipping point, to use a common term. Thomas, no, the author, anyway, where once you get into that even marginally higher level employee, and something that's critical to your business. Like, again, we wouldn't have thought AR was necessarily critical. It's not a super complicated task, but at that point it became pretty critical unless I was
Yeah.
going to do it myself or have an admin try to do it or something like that. Then those benefits become really important. And it's not just having the benefits, because some packages just don't cut it. I mean, then you got to really think, okay, and I would encourage you, try to handle this at the outset when you're developing your business plan. You've got to account for benefits. If you think that,
Yeah.
like, within your prospectus and gaining a business loan and convincing a bank to invest or some outside investor or something, and projecting the cash capital you're going to need to get this thing going, if you don't factor fringe into that ROI calc, which is going to be really rosy and probably completely inaccurate, unless you're very fortunate.
Yeah.
Um, you know, then you're putting yourself at a significant disadvantage. So you really need to make sure, act like you do have to provide benefits
Yeah,
at the
exactly.
outset.
Well,
Plan for that.
and there are some states that are starting to talk
Oh,
about
sure,
laws,
sure.
California being one of them,
Yep,
where, eventually you are going to have to. So,
yep,
starting to think about that future
yep,
state as well. And I think another important part is you said burden, right? Like, burden
yep,
includes taxes, it includes time off, it includes the benefits, it includes a lot of things that like are a cost to you as the employer that your
right.
employees don't see in their bank account. So
Yep,
educating them as well and helping them understand their like total rewards package and
absolutely.
how much they are of value to you. If they have a $150,000 salary that they're getting in
Hmm.
their bank account, well, guess what? They're probably costing you like 100 and like 250, probably maybe even 300, depending on all of the things
Yep,
that you offer. So having them know that, like, I remember the first time when I was younger in my career and I got that, I was like, I had no idea. And I was like, wow, this is like, I didn't realize that, my X salary was costing the company Y. And like now I kind of can see a bigger picture moment as well. And I also like the fact that you called out being competitive, because
yep,
benefits is an area where you can really step up your competitiveness. Now, a lot of companies, especially startups, they're not going to be able to compete, especially on the tech side, to the Microsofts and the Apples of the world. So, what are you able to compete with? Well, maybe benefits, maybe not, because again, those are going to have bigger offerings. But having benefits is important. It's going to be your equity. So, like, it is really important to think about
yeah.
the benefits part of it, and maybe there's an opportunity where, like, to help offload the cost, maybe you make it where you say, hey, if you don't enroll, we'll a stipend, towards something else, so that
Right.
like you're still giving them something, but it's not as much as if they did enroll. So there's a lot of different ways, like you said, being creative
Right.
about it. And
Well, for
let's talk
one
about
thing,
cost, right? Oh, go ahead.
one thing we did that was really creative, that, I mean, it's not that creative, but really helped, was we immediately got into an HSA uh, uh, um, type plan, a high
Yep.
deductible plan where you
Yep.
qualified for an HSA. And then we basically came right out. We said, we're making contributions every year to defray the cost of this HSA. So we understand this is expensive. We understand this. But in conjunction with that, I would say also try to sell your business, because the one thing the Microsofts and some of the larger companies I've worked for and things like that aren't is personable.
Yeah.
And whether you plan on being a personable startup your whole career, it rarely works out that way. If your company gets large, things
Yeah.
have to change, policies have to become blanketed, things like that. But it gives you flexibility, where when you're having the conversation about the benefits you're going to provide, you need to also upsell the fact that, hey, this is a family environment. Hey,
Yeah.
we're going to care about you. We can, if something happens, we can work with you to try to help make you work, help get you through some kind of thing. If you work for a large corporation, the likelihood that they're going to be able to spend the time, and it's not because they don't care, it's because if they do it for you, they have to do it for 5,000 other
2,000 other.
people, and now the
Yeah.
costs explode and they can't do it. They
Mm-hmm.
just physically can't make those exceptions. Well, that's not the case in a startup. The
Yeah.
startup, the upsell of working for a startup is it does make those exceptions. So
Yeah.
bring that into your benefits discussion as well.
Yeah, another way too is career development. As a
Yeah,
startup, you're going to be able to wear multiple hats in this
right,
role. Yeah, I'm bringing you on as a full stack engineer, but you're going to be able to help me with all these other areas that you would never be exposed to, much less work on in a bigger
right.
org, right? Where you're in your like your lane. I'm going to give
Yeah,
you a 5 lane highway that you're going to be driving all over the place, right? And that's the fun part of being in a startup.
yeah,
So let's bring your commodities and
yeah,
finance
right.
background in place. Gosh, benefits, it's just like it's
Yeah,
inevitable. It's always going to go up. It just seems to be out of control, like the costs, right? Especially in a startup where you don't have 500, 1,000 employees to help kind of blanket that one large claim cost of like a heart attack, or, a baby that has to be in prenatal, or a car
yeah,
accident, whatever it might be, the tragic things that happen in life. It's very like, oh my gosh, how, like, am I going to get a 20% increase in my benefit renewal because of this one
yeah,
large claim out of my 40 employees? What are your experience, or what is
sure.
your thoughts on cost containment as
Yeah,
you start to get into the benefit
yeah.
cycle and grow your business?
It's like the plus is you're fully insured and the negative is you're fully insured, on
Yeah.
both sides. So it's like, yeah, you're not having to take on the immediate or full risk of what you're doing because it's being pooled with other companies that are in a similar situation to you. Your risk rating might go up a little bit, but at least, 20% is less than, a $3 million hit because you had a complex cancer case that got out of control. Uh, so there's that. It is a positive, but it's expensive. It's expensive. And
Yeah.
I think the most important thing for a startup to do, again, it goes back to being competitive, is what is the maximum cost, the maximum plan that I can really conservatively, again, I use that word very importantly, conservatively afford, while still giving a solid benefit. And what do I mean by solid benefit? I'm talking about a broad-based network. People like to pick their doctors, those types of
Mm-hmm.
things. You got to focus on if I'm putting myself into the shoe of the person that I'm recruiting, what are the things they're going to care about? Well, the minute you're saying, we're an HMO and these are the doctors you can pick from and this and that, especially in today's world where it's like, good luck even getting into a doctor because
Yeah.
everybody's practice is closed and you're probably getting put off on a PA. In that world, it means even more that I get to keep my doctor. Everything's in network. And so again, when you're factoring the costs for your benefits when you're building your business, you have to think of what's both the maximum and the minimum that I can really get away with here and still attract talent. And that's a really tough decision.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to go with the gold plan, and you're going to have to figure out how to really market that to your people. But you are going to have a high deductible, likely. I would
Yeah.
suggest that.
I would too. Yeah.
Hey, if things go well, again, talk about HSA contributions, matching those types of things to defray the cost. But it's a significant thing, right? And it doesn't go down. When you're fully
Right.
insured, you're outpacing the local area in terms of your increases every year. That's just a fact. You're never getting a decrease, like you said, not with the way utilization goes. And frankly, I would say from my business's perspective, we only have ourselves to thank for that because of the condition that our health globally, but especially in the United States is.
Yeah.
You see the cost of healthcare go up, but you also never see the rates of diabetes go down either. So,
Right.
we kind of have our own, uh,
We're creating our own
we
problem.
are creating our own problem by
Yeah.
being unhealthy. However, that's not going to change, right? It's realistically, that's what you're given. So finding creative ways, there's things like health sharing and some of those networks. They can work well, but again, you really at the end of the day, it better be phenomenal service. They better not get denied for whatever procedure they need. It better
Mm-hmm.
be inclusive of the primary care that they're currently going to, because those tend to be the things that matter most to employees.
And
The minute,
prescriptions, I have
right,
found that also there
right,
are certain people in your employee
yep,
population and or in your candidate population that
yep,
is on a specific prescription that
right,
they can't be denied,
right.
and one of the tricks I've found is that you can work with your benefit provider to get an exception. It might be at cost to you, but you can
Yes.
do that. Another thing I've seen CEO founders and decision makers do early on in the business cycle is that they'll make these benefits because 5 people, I can afford this, it's great. You go get the gold standard, and then all of a sudden now you got 20 people and it is breaking you. So really
Yep.
be thinking, really be thoughtful about what plan you
Right.
put in place, because you don't want a year, 2 years,
Yeah.
3 years down the road having to pull back. And then all of a sudden now these employees that have had first class their entire career, their entire life with you, now
Yeah.
be in coach, So like
Yeah,
thinking
and
about that too.
that goes back to the planning, like you said. I mean, when you're putting together your prospectus, you shouldn't build your business plan based on, startup mode type numbers. You really need to build it as full scale. What are we going to need? There's some things you're going to miss. But if
Yeah.
you sit down and really think it through, you might think, okay, like for our business, okay, how many nurses are we really going to need when we get to this many covered lives? How many medical directors? How many this? How many that? What does our accounting department look like? What's the sharing between our other companies? Those types of things. Then you put those numbers down and you start to go. But if you're not really deliberate in that planning stage, you're really not going to know what kind of benefits you can offer, because it's a black box, and you're just saying, wishing and hoping that the money's going to be there,
Yeah.
and you're not going to run out of cash before you get the thing,
And
flying.
that's no way to run and grow a business.
No, no, that's a
Yeah.
lot of sleepless nights,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Fretful moments. And what kind of assets do you
right,
have personally that you can sell off to make payroll? I've worked with a CEO that sold off cars
yeah,
to make payroll back in the day,
absolutely,
kind of thing, right? So
absolutely,
not a place that anyone wants to be at. So
yeah,
well, as we start to kind of wrap up here a little bit, tell me a little bit about what Curly is all about, because I would love for the
yeah,
founders to hear, and any other audience member to hear what you guys are doing, because I think it's a pretty significant
sure,
offering you guys have.
yeah. I mean, Curely is relationships, and within the healthcare space, in my opinion, it's everything except providing care. So, we get involved at the low level of simple health coaching with a one-on-one nurse that's dedicated to that individual, spending hours and hours with that individual, whatever's needed, because it's a flat fee charged to the business, the self-funded business. Um, or it can be anything as complex as, you've got a very complex condition. You're going to need a surgical procedure or some kind of infusion or some kind of cancer treatment or something like that. And you're nervous, you're scared, you're not doing
Mm-hmm.
anything about it. So we're helping you get the correct second opinion from a world-class physician, a world-class specialist. But we're also making sure you're on the cutting edge of what treatment you need. If you need to go to an extreme center of excellence, not just like, hey, the Milwaukee area, Chicago, LA, we're talking like the big names. If you need to get into those for something that's going to really help the plan, help everybody be healthier, we do those types of things. So everything in between, and it's all based on relationships, which is what's so cool. It's like the anti-AI solution. We're really human in person with that individual, and I got to tell you, you got to love the people, and we
Yeah.
love your employees. We do. We're gonna care for them so that your HR team doesn't have to that degree. Let's face it, because a lot of the people we're dealing with are the more difficult employees. They're the ones that are
Mm-hmm.
less disciplined. They have absences because of health that are causing you to have conflict with them to begin with. And a lot of times we start to remove some of that, and we can make them better employees. It helps your culture, it helps recruitment, and at the end of the day, people that work with us experience that their costs go down. We had a client this year that didn't have to raise their premiums for their employees. I don't really
That's
know of
exciting.
anybody saying that,
Yep.
and they have less large cases and they have less claims. And it's a beautiful thing. It's authentic. These nurses love it because they get to get involved in people's lives in ways that they thought they were going to when they started nursing. And same with our
Yeah.
medical directors. Uh, but we give them the ability to maybe practice medicine a little bit closer to how they'd like to, relationally, finding solutions creatively and not constricted by time.
Yeah.
Let's devote whatever resources they need.
Well, I'm sure that also, I hypothesis wise think that that's got to also improve your employee engagement and your
Yes.
attrition and like so many other things that like as an HR professional can be really hard to like put a number to that ROI, but
Yes.
it's there and it's real. So as we wrap up, any last thoughts or tidbits or tools or tricks that you like to give to
Sure.
the audience today?
Sure. It's a small thing, but there's resources out there. This podcast is certainly one of them, but there's people that are willing to help you. You want to be skeptical, but there are resources out there for problems you have as a small business owner. Do some searching. Do some searching. Everything from cold calling is a really difficult part of your business. Well, there's experts on cold calling that are willing for a reasonable fee to help you figure that out because that might be the reason your business fails. There are people that'll help you make connections. There's people that'll help you structure certain parts of your business and just don't. It's easy to feel like you are an island and you have to do this
Yeah.
all on your own, but spend 5 minutes on your computer, do a quick search, just find people that can help you because that will relieve your stresses and help you sleep at night as much as anything.
And free up some time for you to do what you really should be doing in regards to building
Yes.
your business. Yeah.
Yes.
Great words of wisdom, Jeremy. Thank you so much for joining me today. And for those listening, I hope you have a wonderful evening, afternoon, day, wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you next time.